Last episode, we talked about your childhood and like how things affected you and the obsession with like horror movies and things like that. This episode is going to be more about the actual murder itself. So anything you want to talk about with that, anything you're uncomfortable with, totally fine. Just don't put yourself in an uncomfortable situation.
Okay.
So first question is, did you like premeditate or did you just like have like was it in the moment like, oh hey, I'm just gonna do this?
Well, I certainly didn't plan on anything. I was headed up to an ATM machine in Watertown, and I was going to make these brownies for these people at work. So I stopped off to get some, I think it was M&Ms or Reese's Pieces or something. And on my way back, I parked the car. I went inside the house to get a couple of things. And as I stepped out to get back in my car, I saw this person coming down the street on a bike. And he skidded to a halt right in front of my car. And almost immediately, I started feeling cold. I started feeling sick. Really nervous, like something was going to happen. And I guess I decided right then and there that to hell with my plans, I wanted to do this tonight. I recognized the kid from the neighborhood. I used to work at the video store, as I said, and that attracted a lot of the neighborhood. We had a lot of video games and candy and all kinds of arcade stuff to play with, to interact with, and it attracted a lot of the kids to the area, so everyone knew each other. And I recognized this kid as Stanley. And I started talking to him, and I just felt almost this pressure, this overwhelming anxiety to get him away from the street and into my backyard, to get him alone. It didn't really make sense. I had somewhere to be. There was this girl, Violet, that was waiting for me. I was going to be baking brownies over at her house. I always liked to bake. You know, culinary arts was always my thing. And I find myself start talking to this kid, telling him about snakes in my backyard. And there's no snakes in my backyard. And he's believing me. And I'm going on about how we can go and look for them. And he just agrees. I grab a flashlight out of my car, and I'm looking around, and I see this sledgehammer on the floor underneath the passenger seat. And I remember stuffing it down my pants, and we head into the backyard, and he's asking me, where do we look? And because they don't exist, I don't know what to say. So I just have him keep walking until we got to this wooded area in the back corner of my yard. And I handed him the flashlight, and he found a big stick. And he wanted to know what kinds of snakes they were, and I said I didn't know, but that this is where they were. This is where to look. And I had him root through the sort of brush that was there. And he has the flashlight. He's in front of me. I'm behind him. And it's pitch black. It's a new moon. We're now behind this hedgerow with all of this bamboo and all of these woods, wooded area. And he's going on and on about finding these snakes. By the way, his name is Stanley Edwards. He He was 13, I was 15. We were about the same height, so he was kind of a big kid. I'm not that tall, but he was still a big kid for his age. And we weren't friends, but I knew him. He knew me enough to trust me to follow me into the backyard. And I remember thinking that I have to do this, that I've come too far. And it made no sense. But it felt like there was a gun to my head and that I had to finish this. And I remember taking the hammer out of my pants and holding it in my right hand behind him. And I must have held it in the air until it felt like it weighed 100 pounds. It was so heavy, and it was only 3 pounds. I remember he was saying something about coming back in the daytime when it was lighter, and I just brought the hammer down, and it hit him in the side of the head, and he just went silent. The flashlight went flying. His stick broke. I think he leaned against it and fell forward. But because of the hedgerow, he had nowhere to go. So when I swung again to make him stop, he started to spiral around to face me. But like maybe you'd ride like a horse or a piggyback, and I sat on the small of his back and tried to get a good grip. And I remember hitting him again, and he didn't say anything. It was more like he was in shock or something. And I hit him again, and this was probably the third or fourth time. And that's when he said, "Stop hitting me." He was wailing his hands, flailing his hands. They were gloved. He was wearing these sort of biker gloves. He had like this really dark shirt, camouflage pants on, and sneakers. And I just kept hitting him. And I hit him again and again. And the ME later counted 13 strikes on his skull and the back of his neck. But it was some kind of frenzy that I couldn't control. I couldn't stop once I started. I just wanted him to be quiet and please stop moving. And finally he made this sort of gargling sound, and he was choking on his own blood. And then he lay still. And I remember hitting him one more time because you just don't know. You just can't be sure if he would get up again. And I know it was a crazy amount of attacks, but he took so many blows before he stopped moving and stopped talking. And then finally we were alone, and this dog started barking, and the trees were blocking us, but this man came out on his back porch, and he had on the back light, and he kept yelling at his dog to shut up, but the dog kept going crazy. And I remember my mom always said that dogs can sense evil. The dogs have a sort of a sixth sense for things. Their senses are already honed, and their sense of smell, and I don't know if he smelled blood or what, but he's an animal, and he knew that something was wrong, that something was happening in the woods. And his owner finally dragged him back into the house, and I was alone with Stanley. And I remember the whole time, as camouflaged as I was by the woods, I remember laying flat on top of Stanley, with my face against his bloody hair. And finally I went in search of the flashlight, and I shined it on him, and it was just, there was blood everywhere. It was dark at night, so everything looked just wet. And he had this sort of shaggy, curly hair, and it was all matted, and his skull was broken. And it was hard to tell where his face was. His face was undamaged, but the position of his head had it where it was almost twisted around. And that's when I stood up, and I rose above him, and I stared down, and I knew that he was dead.
Did you feel anything at that time, or did it kind of take a while to like really realize what you had done and to like feel remorse, or do you feel remorseful now?
You have 1 minute left.
I was super scared. I felt like I had just done something that somebody else made me do that I didn't want to. And so I felt not guilt, not shame, but a fear that I'm going to be getting in trouble now. I just did something horrible, and now I have to cover this up. I have to make this go away. I can't get caught. There's no way I can get caught. Is all that was in my head was, I have to move his body. I can't just leave him here. I can't bury him. I have to bring him somewhere else. I have to get him out of my backyard.
Okay, well, since he forgot his question, so your initial response after all that was, you got to cover this up because you knew you were going to get in trouble. You didn't, it wasn't like, oh fuck, I just killed somebody.
I felt like someone did something in front of me that I had witnessed. That was horrible.
That happens with
but I wasn't
psychiatric
responsible.
breaks.
I didn't feel like it was my fault that I did it. Obviously, I'm guilty. Obviously, it's my fault. I killed him. But at the time, it had to be somebody else. It couldn't have been me. And I knew how I had to move him before my mother came home. I didn't want to get caught. So I went and backed my car into the driveway, grabbed some garbage bags from the house, came back and did my best to wrap him up. But he just kept falling out. It's not like in the movies. It was very sloppy, very messy. I tried to drag him all the way back to the car. He felt like he weighed 300 pounds. I think at the time I was 140 pounds, and from the autopsy, he was 135, which isn't very heavy for one to lift. But when you hear the word dead weight, that just means that there's no assistance. No one's helping you lift their legs or walk with you or move with you. You're literally dragging 135 pounds. And I somehow managed to get him into my car. This is 2 weeks out of the Marine Corps. I wasn't a big guy. I did work out, but I didn't really have muscles. I was like this sort of a recovered, puny little bully's prey.
You said you weighed, what, 140 pounds?
When I got arrested, I had a good look at my ID, my mugshot, and it said I was 140 pounds. And I remember from the trial that he was 5 pounds less than me. As I said, we probably were about the same height. He was a big kid. We were about 5 years apart, 5 pounds apart.
How tall are you?
I'm 5'7".
Okay.
So you didn't realize this kid was that much younger than you?
No, I knew he was a teenager. I had no idea what grade he was in. I just knew that he was a kid from the neighborhood. He wasn't a little boy, but he was still 13, and
So
that's a child.
You weren't seeking out a child?
No.
Okay.
No, this was someone who, I feel like if that night one of my friends pulled up in front of my car, it would have been him.
So it was just basically, like you said, just anybody that was there. He just happened to be like at the wrong place, the wrong time type thing.
Something happened that night in my head that finally flipped the switch, that put in motion everything that I had dreamed about as a child, fantasizing over these movies and these true crime books and these documentaries. And here was my chance now. Something said tonight. It makes no sense at all. I know how it sounds.
Well, I think your problem is, I mean, no offense by this, but you're very mentally ill. Like back then, now, like obviously now in prison, you're having medications and you've went through some programs and things like that to help out with that. But back then, you had no guidance or direction. You were very mentally ill, obsessed with horror, and I think it kind of slapped you in the face. Like you had a break with reality, like a psychiatric break from being mentally ill, and like that out of body experience. A lot of mentally ill people experience that actually.
Yeah, I really have taken a long time to come to accepting responsibility because it didn't feel like it was my fault. As guilty and as blood covered as I was, I did mean to do it, and yet I thought it was wrong the minute it happened. I was just confounded by so much darkness back then that fantasy became sort of a blurred reality where I could make something happen if I wanted to. And I think that's what the Marine Corps did. It took away my inhibition that had always stopped me from doing it before. When I was being bullied, I never fought back. I never got revenge. And here I am taking it out on some poor kid who rides down the street in the dark of September on a Tuesday night.
So if you want, like, so what did you do after, like, with the bags and stuff? You drug them to your car. Where? Because I read in an article, it said that you had taken him somewhere where, like, another body had been found roughly a year before then.
Yeah, it was this complex of condominiums or townhouses, and it was really secluded. It was way off the road, and in a bit of an industrial area too. So I knew that there weren't going to be people walking their dogs, and there was certainly a body found in that same area, and I thought the police already working another case. What's one more body in the area? Maybe it's It can look like it was drug-related, gang-related. I don't know. It was very stupid. It wasn't thought out at all. But I pulled into this very dark area. This dead end is what it was, a cul-de-sac. And pulled over, and I had a hatchback. It was an Isuzu Impulse from 1984. So it was this old used car in 1997. And I pulled him out of my car and dragged him to the side of the road. Got back in and just peeled out, just left. Left him there to be discovered by what had to be the next car to come down the road. And what happened was I had wiped what blood I could off before I got the bags when I ran into the house. But when I pulled him out of the back of the car, he had this sort of shaggy hair, and it was drenched in blood. And when the momentum of his body fell out of the back of the hatchback, it sort of whipped me where I had this fresh covering of blood again up and down my body. So I remember pulling over and having to take my shirt off and wipe off my face so that I can see again. I was just covered in this boy's blood.
Did that scare you? You there?
What's that?
I said, did that scare you?
It makes me sick today. It made me scared back then.
On
It made
mine,
me scared like I wanted the blood off of me. Here I am in the middle of September, the end of September, and driving around with no shirt on, and there's all this blood in the back of my car. It's a hatchback, as I said. And this girl, Violet, was waiting for me. She had 2 little kids. I was supposed to be getting money from the ATM so that we could buy pizza, and then we were going to bake. So I knew that they were waiting for me, and now I had already spent all this time unloading the body, cleaning up. If I was going to have any kind of alibi, I needed to get back to her. And I remember going into the house, and there was nobody home. So my mother hadn't come home yet. My sister hadn't come home yet. And I was in the bathroom. And I remember seeing what looked like SpaghettiOs, which could only be brain, on my bandana. I was wearing a camouflage bandana around my head, top of my head, covering up my hair. Not as a disguise, but I don't know if it was some stupid 90s look or what. But I remember ripping it off, stuffing it down my pocket, and throwing myself over the bathtub and getting that sort of gushing tub water from the shower to dunk my head and wash my face and wash my blood off, his blood off, drenched my head and went back into my bedroom and found a t-shirt to wear, still wearing the bloody jeans, and went back downstairs. I remember stuffing the bandana down the gutter on the way to the car, the storm drain, and I drove directly to the video store, almost like I had to be seen. She lived next to the video store. This is the video store that I sort of grew up with when I was 13 and got a job in. And I remember the guy that was working behind the counter was the boss. who had always plied me with all of these films, these horror films, and these pornographies and shit like that. And now here he was yelling at me, saying something about, you have this overdue movie. When are you going to bring it back? And I can't hear a word he's saying. And I realize I'm starting to pass out, standing in front of him. And I remember just walking away from him, backing out of the store and going into the fresh air. It's dark at night. It's probably 7:30, 8 o'clock, September 30th, 1997. And he must have been confused as hell, but all I wanted was to be seen. And I went over to Violet's house, and her little boys were home. And they let me in, and I said, "Where's your mother?" And they said that she came looking for me. She couldn't find me. She thought something happened to me. And apparently I had been gone for like a half hour, 40 minutes. And that's how long it took to murder Stanley, dispose of Stanley, and clean up after Stanley, and to return to Violet's house. And I remember giving her all the money in my pocket, or giving it to her boy, and I think there was a bottle of vodka for some reason in my pocket. I wasn't drunk at the time, and the baking stuff was still in my car, and I told her I would just see her in the morning. I remember just staggering out of the house because I felt like I was going to pass out again. It was like a bizarre panic attack slash, I don't know, super anxiety, super intense emotion were all sort of crashing into each other. And I needed to be alone. Having been seen, I needed to be alone.
Online, a lot of articles that I've read have said that you're like a sadist. Do you agree with that? Do you think that like you were like that back then and considered yourself sadistic?
What I did was sadistic. What I felt was not pleasure. What I felt was not excitement. What I experienced that night was fear. And I don't think that's what a sadist feels when they commit a crime like this. I think there's some kind of revelry. There's some kind of enjoyment. And as much as I was satisfied that I had accomplished something that I had long dreamed of doing, there was this fear that I had become something that I had always sort of feared and admired in these serial killers, in these so-called, famous murderers or infamous.
You have 1 minute left.
And I was becoming them, and that was scary to me. That wasn't exciting.
Okay, that was our part 2 interview with Joseph. Like I said, as you can tell, this episode focused more on the murder aspect of his crime. We're not trying to glorify the crime in itself. We're more or less just kind of, you're hearing the point of view and the process that he went through and all that to when the crime was committed. And, it's sad that, Stanley lost his life that day. But overall, it was very interesting listening to him talk because there's a lot of people, killers and stuff that, like with books or when they've been interviewed, they will talk about like the out of body experience where you're not in control of your body, but you're watching it from like
Just
it's
because you're doing something traumatizing
yeah
and you're disassociating, it's a trauma response. You're traumatizing yourself by doing something fucking stupid, and that's what's gonna happen. That's what's gonna happen. You're
yeah
overloading your mind.
yeah. And the way that I kind of look at that, with it seems like he was interested, in true crime killers, and then when he actually done it, he was talking about being in fear and stuff. Kind of like reality kind of hitting away.
To put it bluntly, for me, like in my thought process, like I understand like bullying's not okay. He had like, a weird childhood, picked on, whatever, for being smaller and stuff like that.
Which 5'7", that's
That's
well,
average.
yeah, it's more average height for a man. But at one point, men weren't that tall. Like back in the 1800s, that was like tall, kind of like
But
average height. But
with my thought process on it, obviously just being like a fresh, raw reaction, the only words I have for it is he was a little kid who had no power, he had a rough life, which, like, totally understand that. I don't like shaming people for that, but he was a pussy. Like, he was just one of those kids. No hate to anyone that's like that or has been through that. Sorry, he's been through that. But the truth of the matter is, you know, he was a weak person, he wanted power. He suppressed that for so long. He was already mentally ill, which that could be genetics, it could be from traumatic childhood, whatever. Like, what, either way, he's mentally ill. He still is. Back then, he had no support with it, wasn't very much talked
well, and
about, he
like what
didn't
he
have help.
said too in the last episode, where he had mentioned about crap. Sorry, I just lost like um, sorry, my bad. I really just like lost train of thought there. But in the first part, remember when he had mentioned all that?
Well, yeah, I know, but I'm just saying, he was that pussy little kid that got picked on all the time, had no power or control over his life, his parents split up, he had no
Well,
control over anything in
that
his
okay. I
life.
got my thought process back. It's when he was talking about getting out of the Marines, and he had like nothing because he
Yeah,
got forcibly kicked out of that. No job, no nothing. So, which he was trying not outside of the murder itself, he was trying to do a decent normal day. Hanging out with somebody, baking, all that, and then this just kind of transpired. But
it's kind of one of those things that just hits, like you're just overcome with
the
anger
way
and it
he
just
talked
happens.
was, no matter who it was going to happen that day.
He didn't seek out anybody that could just happen to, which is
Like I
still
said, wrong,
shitty.
wrong, wrong place,
But
wrong time.
anyway, he was obsessed with horror movies. He found power and control in those. He liked scaring himself a little bit, like everybody does. Everybody likes watching scary movies. Like you're watching scary movies to scare yourself because it's thrilling, it's fun, it gets those glands in your body going, like your adrenaline and stuff. Like people like that type of thing. That's normal, but the not normal part is when it becomes like an infatuation, not even an obsession. When you find power and control in it and you idolize certain things and you're like, oh wow, like those people are my heroes because they did what I never could, and then you do it. Like, I think that really fucking hit him hard, and he was like, oh shit, like, he realized he couldn't handle it like he thought he could because you really have to be like a sociopath. I don't think he's a sociopath. I think he just got lost in Hollywood as a powerless child with mental illness.
Yeah, he found that was kind of like the scapegoat from reality,
And he
but
thought that was going to make him feel better and that he was going to feel control and power, and it's fucking stupid.
you think, yeah, because like with that, because well, look at the way in the movies they portray, which not saying horror movies. Like I said, I was raised on horror movies. I haven't killed nobody, but
Well, yeah, but
I know, but where where you got like your older generation that blames music
I'm not
and
blaming
horror
it on
movies.
that. I'm
Yeah.
just saying it does contribute to idolize.
Well, it's kind of more or less. I wouldn't say it's the killers in themselves that's portrayed in the movies. It's how they're portrayed by, Hollywood and stuff sometimes. Cause like a lot of them, like with Jason, Leatherface, Michael Myers, a lot of people just the way they're portrayed, all the movies, or you know what I mean. Like the villain becomes the hero for people, and like the way that they look so effortlessly when they kill somebody in the movie, then people kind of, you know what I
That's what
mean?
I'm
There's
saying.
more,
Where he was talking about he had to
yeah.
hit him a few times. He just wanted to be quiet. Like, it's not like the movie. You're not gonna crack somebody one fucking time and they're gonna die. Like, that can happen, but if you don't have like a shit ton of force behind you, probably not.
There's another gentleman that what was, I think they call him the four. chain killer or something, but he had strangled his girlfriend and like posted her pictures online of her dead. And I think that was actually what he posted in the comment. Well, on the post was saying that it was harder to strangle than what it is in the movies.
Yeah, it
Let me
takes like
double.
8 minutes or something
Yeah,
to
it takes a
to
long while.
suffocate
But it
someone.
was something of that nature of saying that basically saying the movies made it look easy.
Well, yeah, because it's a movie, it's supposed to be fictional. It's not supposed to be like it's a movie.
Which, like what he said, like yeah, the boy was 13, but looking at that, if he didn't know, like he said, he didn't know his age, and if he was about as big as he was, he could have been like, well, he's around my age, maybe a little young. You know what I mean?
I don't think the age played a part into it, like where it just happened. Like he just
Yeah.
happened to be in front of his car. But I
The
also
media
don't
might
like
have. I'm not sure that what the articles that you read did it do that
do what?
play on the age.
Yeah,
Okay, some of them that I read, it didn't really play too much on
it
age,
played
but
on it saying like how he was 18 and the kid was 13 and he killed this poor 13-year-old boy. Which yes, he did kill a poor 13-year-old boy. But I don't like using that excuse though either, because a lot of people will say that about girls too. Like when these older predator fucking pieces of shit see a girl that's 13 or 14, like, well, man, she looks 18, she looks 20, like, da 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 da. I don't like using that as an excuse. Always double check. Which, if you're killing somebody, you're not going to be like, hey, you got an ID, but you know what I mean?
well, nothing with this case in itself, but the one guy I write, and we've been talking about paranormal, the Jason Budrow, the one that killed the I-5 Strangler, he says what the media done to him. Like the victim's family came out and said, like basically, thank you, but the prison was stopping the letters coming in. But the detectives tried to make it, oh, you killed an 80-year-old feeble man. He's like, he was a serial killer.
Yeah.
Like I killed him in
And
prison.
victims' families were like, hey, man, thank you for
Yeah,
killing that guy.
he said that like people like helped like got the
Well,
family's
media is
message to
always going
him.
to make it look worse, and everybody's always going to have their own
Well, that's basically what
opinions.
he was saying, that he done something that the state didn't do. He said he should have got the lethal injection. I don't think he wasn't on death row, but he's saying he done what the state shouldn't. But he said they were mad because he had other murders that he was suspected of, but he wasn't talking. But you have that control though. That's what a killer does when they don't say there's more killings, and when there is, because it's that control over the detectives. It's all mind game.
And not to like, because like, obviously, hearing this out of his mouth today is different. Like we were talking about how he's very intelligent and respectable person in our last episode, which I'm not going back on that. I still think he's very intelligent, and I still think now, not then or anything to do with crime, but right now with him being trying to rehabilitate himself, he's respectable. Hearing this and stuff, like it gives me those mixed emotions. Like everybody knows, anybody that's listened to me, I have mental illness myself. Sometimes I go off in a tyrant and I'm fucking angry and everything, in which I'm angry hearing this because I just hate that for that boy and his family. And I don't necessarily, I don't know. I don't want to say anything against him, but for a 30-minute, 45-minute period of time, and for him to think, oh, hey, that place found a body and da da da. Like, to me, that seemed like, I don't know, would you think of that on the spot? Like, oh, hey, I just went and killed
Well,
this guy and da da da.
to be honest with you, yeah, kind of, because some of the other cases I've read, like when a guy killed, well, I shouldn't say a guy, it was more of a boy, same age, killed his younger brother, and that was like his thing to get rid of the body.
Well, I mean,
And
I'm talking about where he put it at a place where another body was found. Police were already.
well, that was still like what he said. It was still a stupid idea, but that's what I want to.
That's thinking pretty quick on your feet, though. If you're in such a
Well,
panic and having.
he was in the true crime though, so he probably read about that happening, and like he said, they would think since it was an unsolved case as well. Because I'm thinking, like I said, the other case I'm talking about, I'm thinking that's what that boy did. He dumped the boy in the woods by somewhere to make it look like something else happened. Like I don't know, it's weird. Neither of us have been in that situation, so we don't know how our mind would think. But that would be my opinion. Like I said, with him it being in the true crime, that's kind of he probably read about that, so that was kind of his way, and he knew the areas because did he say it was a dead end?
Yeah, I don't know.
Pretty
Yeah,
sure.
he knew the area. I see your point. I do see your point on that, but I don't know. I just feel like something is off.
Well, it'd be like if you kill somebody here, you're going to know areas that you could go roughly to
But if
dump the
I'm in a
body.
panic, like how he said that he was just panicking and didn't want to get in trouble and he knew he had to do this, yeah, you knew that, but if you're in a panic and you're about to pass out and your adrenaline's going that fucking high, are you really gonna think that intelligently on your feet?
It,
I feel something off. Maybe it's just me because I've been having a weird day, but
it, yeah, I see your point as well. Like, you would think it's more in that sense too, but like I said, I'm not sure of the area that all this happened at. Because like here, we live up a holler. There's gaps in between houses where he lived at that time when that happened. That might have been the only spot. You know what I mean?
secluded
Yeah.
spot, yeah.
Because he's probably like say, well, he even said his neighbor, the dog was outside
What he said about
barking.
the dog, I like that because animals do know. I like that part.
And if I walk, uh, our neighbor down the road, they got dogs. They stay inside. But if I walk on down, dogs. If I walk up the road, just a little ways, dogs.
And I just want to say something too. I want to say this publicly just to see if I'm the only person that feels this way. But because I know a lot of people, when someone's speaking about it, saying the boy's name, Stanley, for us to say it and talk about him and in a memorial sense, oh, that poor boy type thing. That's one thing. But the way he kept saying Stanley over and over and over. Did anyone else find that weird? Comment, go on our Facebook page, comment something, comment on whatever you can comment on. I want interaction on that.
Well, you could
I
share it
want to
on. You could
know.
share it on this, on this post. We'll post it in the group and all that, and on. Well, I'll tag you, what you usually share it anyways, on our personal Facebook if you happen to be
But I
friends
want to
with
know
us.
if anyone else finds that weird and disgusting, because to me that makes me want to vomit.
To be honest with you,
It kind of pissed me off.
well, yes, I see both angles of it to being upset because he killed the boy, so he's more on a personal level than we are because we weren't involved in it.
He knew him from around the neighborhood,
But
and yeah, I get that,
but in a way though too, you could look at it. He's not just saying my victim. He's putting a But I think it's more. I don't know. With you're looking at going on, see, September of this year will be 25 years. So I look at it more in a way of where he's accepted the crime and he's still people's gonna probably think I'm wrong on this too, but I kind of see it as that
he's
given
acknowledging he killed
and
someone,
giving the
a
victim
real person.
giving the victim the name,
Right.
not like how
It makes it personal.
yeah, with like Ted Bundy and everything. You hear about their victims, but most time when they're like, "Oh, they were Ted Bundy's victims," he's given his victim his name and talking to him like that. Like that was one way to look at it, but like I said, I see both
I
angles.
see that. I think I get clouded, like a clouded opinion because being a
Yours,
mother,
yeah, yours is more the knee gut reaction of what people's gonna think. Like if he probably
if
would have
I
done
had to hear
this,
this and I heard
if
my
this,
family member or my child's murderer
yeah,
saying his name like that, I would go
oh
fucking
yeah, yeah.
AWOL.
But like I said, if this was more, say the murder just happened last week and he's doing this, then yeah, I can
But I do see your
understand.
point. I
Yeah.
like that you said that because I definitely can see that. I think I just
This is
get
like I said.
over.
If this was like I said a week or two right after
Yeah.
the murder, both it being 25 years later, I think it's more of him showing acceptance of what happened. Like what he said, he's accepted it. Like it took him a while, but he's accepted it. He was responsible. He was guilty of it, and I think that's why he's given his victim a name instead of just saying, "Hey, this is." Well, like I said, he goes by Joseph now, but instead of
Kind
saying
of
this is
trying to
Todd's
be
victim,
respectful almost.
yeah.
I see your
But
point.
you see how like I was saying
Yeah.
about Ted Bundy's victims, a lot of them people always like give them their name, but a lot of them just like, oh, victim number this, and
But when you put a name and a face to it, it
yeah,
makes it real. It's
yeah,
it reaches people on a personal level. I see.
like this, like our interview with him. like we had to edit out some parts because we lost the phone call on the part from the system. Like basically
That's
just
just
hung up.
prison, yeah, prison time
Yeah,
calls.
and editing out just a small talk at the end when after it said a minute was up and where we left off. But this is a raw edit of an actual killer talking about his crime, and you're hearing it firsthand of what he done, the experience. Which some of us might have changed, a little bit because it is 25 years after the fact. So, but reading some of the articles I've read on him throughout the years, because I've researched his case before years ago, and I was like, hey, I'll decide to write them, like last year. So that's what I did. But memory, we've talked about before. Memory is never a 100% thing. But it like his story compared to the articles of what he told police back then, it still is pretty much. There might be a few things different, but it's nothing. You know what I mean? Major
There
different.
wasn't anything underlying that's like, oh shit, we just figured it out. Like,
Yeah, like he could have been like he rode a blue bike, but now he's saying it was a red bike. Something little like that. Like
the baseline is the same.
it's still the same, but
Because I don't think he lied ever about it. Like, little things may have changed just from, like you said, failed memory, but
and what a lot of killers and serial killers say, this could happen to anybody. Like what he said, he was fascinated with it.
that's
True
relatable because,
crime.
like, people say that all the time as an expression, like, oh, I'd kill that motherfucker. Like, I know I say that all the time. Like, people have those
You're
thoughts,
that
people have
you're
those.
that close.
Yeah.
Like if you say it and go up and do something, and then bam, you're right there.
Yeah. Like,
You're doing it.
or like people that get road rage, like him being in his car and somebody doing that, like, people's killed people over road rage before. It's literally, like, just
Hey,
insanity.
instead of like where I said that Stanley was wrong place, wrong time. Same thing with like with road rage. If somebody goes and kills somebody, on a
You
good
didn't seek out that
on a good
person.
on a good day, you probably wouldn't have done that. But it would be still wrong place, wrong time for the person that you killed. But it's also you were just having a bad day, and you weren't.
Mentally ill,
Yeah,
all the factors
you
played
weren't in your
into it.
headspace, and you're like, well, this is really like, say you're so overwhelmed for like say a month straight of stuff, and then that person say cut you off in traffic,
And you're just like,
and
bop,
that's that
bop, bop.
last thing that just takes it.
Yeah.
It happens. You never. That's why I say you got to be nice to people because you never know what's going to happen. Which, like what he said, it was going to happen no matter what.
I
Just
want to put a trigger warning on this episode as well, just in case, because you never know who's family to who and things like that. And especially, like, as a parent, I don't know if they would keep up with
I don't
his
know.
status,
It's
so you should maybe
some
say.
some do, some don't.
I feel
Which
like I would probably be obsessive. If anything, God forbid anything ever happened like that, I think that I would become obsessive with it and be really horrible about it. But I do want to put a trigger warning, and I truly do hope that his family has peace and, like, you never recover from that. It's never going to go away. The pain is probably still just as
see,
hurtful. But I don't want something like this rubbing salt in their wounds.
yeah, you're
Because
looking at
I'm
he
very
would
interested.
be.
I love talking about it. I love picking the brains of people like this. But
That's
I,
what
I
the
don't want to hurt anyone either.
Well, that's the way we look at it. It's a research purpose
Yeah.
in that sense. Like, yeah, he's talking about the crime, but possibly we could learn something from this in the future.
But where we talk about saying how, it could be anybody. I don't want to make light of it. I don't want to seem like we're siding with him or that he didn't do anything wrong. He definitely did.
When he admits he did.
Yeah, and he deserves what he's gotten from it, obviously,
Hmm.
and everything like that. I really wouldn't want to do that to that boy's family.
Like I said, it's weird because like I said, some families are all about it, like keeping track of it, and some of them
Just try to
just
erase
kind of go
it.
out of the
Yeah,
limelight and just overlook it. Because
try to move on and grieve in peace.
true crime is definitely, as you could tell, like look at all the documentaries, and like I said, like with Ted Bundy, look how long that happened. Go back in the '70s. He was executed in '89, and he's still talked about to this day. Books are still being wrote about him today. And like H. Holmes, Jack the Ripper, Jack the Ripper and H. Holmes back in the 1800s, late 1800s, and they're still being talked about today. So that's the only problem when a family does endure something like this. It's still in the limelight.
Because this is kind of, like, I don't want to say it's, like, it is graphic, a little bit gory, like him
Well,
talking about certain things and details of it.
Well, it's like the movies.
I would not want to hear that.
Well, it's like what you see in the movies, but this is actually coming from an actual real incident
Oh, no,
that
as a
happened.
true crime lover, I love talking about it, but putting myself, like, I just keep thinking as a mom. Like, as a mother, I don't know.
Yeah, like that's the case has always bothered me. Like, all of them bother me to an extent, but the kid ones are always worse.
Yeah.
Because, the kid, like I said, he'd be pushing, let's see, if he was 13 at the end of September. We just assumed that he had a birthday, so that means he'd be 38 years old. So he'd be pushing 40. He'd have kids, could be leading up to grandkids soon, in a few years.
Literally your brother's age.
No, my brother's in his 40s. He's 42.
Yeah, well, close enough.
Well, 41, I mean.
I didn't realize he was...
He was, he's 41.
I thought he just turned 40.
He's 41.
But still, that's close enough. Like, he's got grown daughters. And, like, it's always hard to think about the life that could have been,
Yeah, because he'll be 42 in February. So he just turned 41. And well, look at me. That's the same thing with, our oldest. Like, by the time I'm 40, he's going to be pushing 20. So he could have, hopefully don't have a child at that young of age, but we'll see how that goes. But yeah, it's just always rough. But yeah, we kind of rambled a little longer than I thought we would.
I feel like we always do on the emotional ones.
Like I said, I think people like to hear our opinions after it. And like I said, we got one more.
Not.
Well, probably not either, but we got one more, which people did say they like the longer episodes. And I think this overall kind of gave our view. Like I said, we're not experts on it, so it was just kind of our perspective. I really hope you guys enjoy this episode. And like I said, we got one more part to record with him. Like, he might be a guest on other episodes, possibly in the future. Like I said, because we're only shooting 12 episodes this year as of right now, and then we'll be shutting down and then trying to start back up next year. Because it's just, a lot of work trying to keep recording, and we don't make money from it. So just time and everything, it just puts a lot of stress on us. So that's why we kind of disappeared for a few months. Well, like 6 months. But we'll probably return probably February, March of next year after we finish this season out. Like I said, I've posted that we're going to record in seasons now and try to get an episode out every 2 weeks, because this will be our 5th episode with him. Well, total. It's our 2nd one with him, but our 5th total for this season. And we have one more with him, like I said, that we have planned, and that will be kind of talking more with
prison life.
Kind of trial after the fact of, him going to getting arrested and all that, prison. Because I think it'd be interesting, 18 years old, stepping into a prison. Because, he's going to be tried as an adult. Because he is an adult, technically. He's still a young teenager, but I don't know, most places kind of consider you an adult when you hit 21. But
most places consider you an adult when you hit 18.
Well, yeah, but, you know what I mean, though. Yeah. But, so, like I said, thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode. And like I said, the next one after this will be, along with Joseph's interview with the aftermath of the crime and basically maybe a little bit of trial, and then, him going to prison and how he is in that, which I know he did touch base a little bit on in the first episode. Like I said, we might eventually have him team up with us on other episodes, get his opinion on things. Like I said, we'll see what we have in the works later on, but we got a lot of stuff planned. If you follow us on anything on social media, we had a ex-professional serial killer, well, they consider him serial killer.
A hitman.
Kind of, yeah, in a way. But he's reached out to us. We plan on doing something that might just be a solo by me, because the time frame that he can do, because he's not in the United States, it might only be because where I work night shift, might have to do something during the day, and we have our children during the day. Well, the oldest two are in school, so we'll figure something out. But then we want to try to interview some other people that I know that are, in the true crime field. But like I said, thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one, and hope you enjoyed this episode.